Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 171. And this is a show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. So I go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week and everything in between. This week was a very small week for me. I only got 11 books, and let's get started. What was number 11? And that was Red Agent, The Human Order. So with this issue, I was looking forward to it because I really do like Brittany's character from Zenescope, but it looks like it's continuing from the last miniseries, and I didn't read that fully because I couldn't get into it. And it has the same problem here. I like Brittany as a character, but the supporting characters are very bland, and the situations they're going through is very bland of her being an agent. There definitely needs to be a little bit more depth to the issue. I do like the artwork, though. I really liked the way she looks as a werewolf, and just really great detailed art. So I like that, but I do think the story needs a little bit of work. I'll try to pick up the second issue depending on how many books I get, but I was disappointed with this one. So I'll give that 2 stars. So moving on to number 10, which is Guardians of the Galaxy issue 14. A book you don't really need to read. That's the reason why it's low. So with this book, it's not an Elseworld story, but it's like a missing story type thing where Rocket Raccoon is reminiscing about why he hates being grounded, being on Earth, and now it's because of Spider-Man, of all reasons. Sure, go back to that story. It was a little weird, the transition. Very weird. I actually had to keep reading it back. I'm like, wait, how did they go to space? Oh, okay, Rocket Raccoon is talking about Spider-Man for some reason. And this, this issue, it's about Spider-Man being kidnapped by the Skrulls and Flash saying, we need to save Spider-Man. The action was okay. The story in general is just okay. But I will give the relationship between Flash and Spider-Man was definitely the highlight. If you enjoyed that, pick it up for that. But even the art, it was okay. The faces looked a little puffy at times. And also, like, the facial features looked small and the face looked a little bit bigger. And I can show you that, especially with Star-Lord and Flash. I really got that vibe. So overall, like I said, it's not a really necessary issue and very skippable. So I gave that 2.5 stars. And that was number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is the new Talent Showcase issue 1, which I went totally in depth with on my in-depth review on my channel if you want to check out about all the stories. But overall, the best story was the Constantine story in the beginning. There was no horrible story in this book, but there wasn't anything that totally grabbed me at the same time. If you get it cheaper than $7.99, I totally recommend it. But also I recommend it just to try out these new writers. They obviously worked hard on it. And it's cool that DC gave a chance to showcase these writers. So, new Talent Showcase issue 1 gets 3 stars, and that was number 9. Moving on to number 8, another kind of short story book that came out this week, which I also went in depth with on my in-depth review, but I'm going to kind of summarize here, which is Batman Annual issue 1. So with this issue, the best story was definitely the first one, once again, where we get to see Batman get a dog for Christmas and doesn't even know it's his Christmas present. And Alfred trains him, and he doesn't believe that this dog can be good because he was a dog for the Joker. But he ends up being Ace, the Bat Dog, which was cool, the Bat Hound. And I like that story. The other stories are a little bit forgettable, but there is a character that's shown that might show up in the future. Let me remember their name. Let me see, I think it's after the Harley story. It was fun to see Paul Dini write Harley again. That's definitely something maybe worth getting the book. The new character is called Stag, so we'll see if we're going to see that character in the future. Maybe Justice League of America, because Steve Orlando's writing it, and Batman's going to be in that book, so maybe we'll see him there. And yeah, the other stories are kind of lackluster for me, so I don't know if it's worth it just to pick up all these short stories, but it wasn't bad. I gave Batman Annual issue 1 3 stars. Alright, so now we're moving on to number, what are we up to? We're up to number 7 already, because I didn't get a lot of comics this week. Number 7 is The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 9, which had an interesting cliffhanger with the White Ranger being evil and being possessed by the Black Dragon. But at the same time, I feel like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers always rely on the cliffhanger. A lot of the rest of the story has pacing problems. The character interactions are off for some reason. Not that the characters are off, but just the intensity of the character interactions aren't there for me. I just feel bored sometimes reading it. So yeah, I think the pacing needs to work where it's just not just the cliffhanger that's exciting, but the rest of the story is exciting too. So Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 9 gets 3 stars from me. So now we're moving on to number 6, which is Frozen issue 3, which did get a little higher than usual. I mean, it's still these short stories where, honestly, this issue didn't even need the short story. I feel like I just should call this episode the short story episode because there's so many annuals and short stories that came out. Anyways, but the middle of the story actually is going to continue in the next issue, so I don't really understand that. I feel like just have that one story in this issue. But all the stories are entertaining. Unlike past issues, there are some stories like, I could, skip this, I never needed to know this. But the first story is, expanding the universe of Frozen, where we get to see one of the other queens shows up, and we learn about other places besides, Arendelle. So that was a cute story. And middle story, also expanding Frozen a bit, where this relative of theirs wants to figure out the source of Elsa's powers and the family's powers in general. And that's why I'm like, I kind of wish they just told that story here and I would have given it a higher rating because the story is interesting, but it just like split up so much in the story. And then the last story was a little bit uninteresting of them delivering food to people. And I'm like, oh, okay. This goes back to, like, last issue where there's just, less interesting stories about the mythology of Frozen. But the artwork is great for this book. Really like the detail here. And I also really like the coloring. Like, the skin palette for Elsa looks really cool because of her powers. So I really like the artwork and how the coloring really makes everything pop very well. So I gave Frozen issue 3 3 stars, and that was number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Miss Marvel, issue 13, which wasn't the best issue of Miss Marvel, but I did like the supporting characters here, so we get a little bit of insight on what's going on with Zoe, what's going on with Nakia, and what's going on especially with Mike after Bruno has left. And then we have a new character, which is Kamala's brother-in-law, joining Kamala's school. And I really liked him as a character, but then the issue kind of falls off when they go into the preachiness of voting. And, I would have liked this issue more if it was before the election. Now, I do think it's relevant after the election too, but this would have been more relevant when it should have came out. It actually got delayed, this book. So that definitely brings it down a little bit. But overall, I do think it's worth getting the issue just for the supporting characters. But it is a one-shot issue. You don't need to get it, but if you're a Miss Marvel fan, you should get it. So I'll give Miss Marvel issue 13 3 stars. And now it's number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Injustice Gods Among Us, Year 5, Issue 1, where the first issue with Harley was so good. I was ready to give this, pick of the week. But then the other stories with Superman, they kind of descended a bit. I didn't care about that story as much, with Damian being compared to the God of War. And then there's a Black Lightning story where he's teaming up with Batman and Superman at the same time, or at least deciding if he wants to or not. So those stories were a little bit of the same thing, where it's like, oh, alright, Superman's doing the same thing. And it's not as character driven. But the Harley story was really well done, which is why it's in my top 5. And artwork overall for all the stories were very consistent. Love the artwork, and I love the posture of Harley, even when she's Harleen Quinzel. That's really did it for me, the artwork here. So yes, first story definitely worth it. The others, unless you're, a big Superman regime fan, I don't know if you'll enjoy it as much. But overall, it's still a worthwhile annual. There's less short stories in here than the other annuals. So I do think it's worth the $4.99, and I'll give Injustice Gods Among Us, issue 1, annual, 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 3, which is No Angel, issue 1, which probably would have been higher if it wasn't for the artwork. The artwork, the line work didn't work as much, and there's the coloring was really dark. I didn't think it worked. So yeah, the line work made the faces look out of proportion. But overall, I really like the story, though. It's about this woman who just lost her father and brother because they were murdered, and she doesn't have the best relationship with her mother. But then she meets this woman who had an affair with her father, and she's obviously not very happy about this, our main character, but learns that she has angel blood in her, and she has a sister. So her sister is an angel, and we'll see what she ends up doing with that. And we also learn a little bit about our main character. She was, she had a tour in Iraq, and now she's an FBI agent. And I really liked the story here. I thought we were transported into the world very well through supporting characters and through learning about our main character. That definitely hooked me to get the next issue, and I liked the whole angel mythology. Again, the only thing that really brings this down is the artwork. I was disappointed with that, but I'll definitely get the second issue because of the story. So No Angel, issue 1, gets 3.5 stars, and that was number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is another annual, which I think they did this annual right, and that was Star Wars Annual issue 2, where it's just one contained story. It's about Princess Leia being not kidnapped but hurt, and this girl Pash trying to help her out, but also doesn't really know what side she wants to be on, because she feels like either way she's going to be the one who dies because she's insignificant. But in the end she learns about hope, and she doesn't totally agree with Princess Leia or the rebels, but she loves the idea of hope. So I like this because it was one contained story that built the characters, that built this new character, but also built Princess Leia's character. And I kind of wish Star Wars would continue to do that. I feel like it's been in a rut where they do these action issues that you can't really progress anything because it's in between movies, you know what happens next, and you can't really spoil anything for episode 8 or episode 9, but yeah, I like this issue. I thought it did a good job of telling a contained story, and also for an annual, it didn't split it up in 5,000 different stories, it just told one shot, which was an enjoyable story. So Star Wars Annual issue 2 gets 4 stars, and that was number 2. So now we're moving on to my number 1 pick, my pick of the week, which was Jughead issue 11. I've been really enjoying this book. I'm upset that Sabrina is leaving, but I thought she had a really good send-off of learning exactly what her position is in this universe. I hope she has a spin-off in this modern Archie universe, because I would love that. But it's also Jughead and Sabrina kind of forgiving each other, or at least Sabrina understanding Jughead's point of view. And I love that Sabrina uses her magic to try to hide her witch powers, but at the same time wants to open up to Jughead. So instead of saying witch and magic, she says cool teen and burgers. So that was fun. And yeah, it was just a really good full circle arc for Sabrina. And obviously it's just a really fun comedy issue that does a good job with character development as well. With really awesome artwork that mixes the modern and classic Archie Reader Digest type style, even in the middle right there where she's telling her flashback. It was so, old school Archie, the way it was drawn. So I really like this issue. I gave it 4 stars. Definitely the best issue I read this week. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. What comic books did you get? What was your worst pick of the week? What was your best pick of the week? And everything in between. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.